One little point, by the way, you know, Spain is on the western edge of the Mediterranean. The Turks are on the eastern edge of the Mediterranean. And there was a battle, a sea battle called the Battle of Lepanto in 1620, in which the Spanish fleet decimated the Turkish fleet. It was the end of the Turkish Navy in 1620. So you have to understand that the wars of Islam are wars that are like pendulums. They go back and forth and back and forth. The Muslims rise and then they fall. They rise and then they fall. What we are facing today, brothers and sisters, is the third and final rise of Islam before the third and final fall. Now what has happened is that whereas Christopher Columbus was responsible for sending back all this gold and silver to Spain, now Islam has discovered that it has the oil weapon. And by the way, it's in Genesis. The blessing to Esau, the blessing actually to Jacob also, but it hasn't been fulfilled yet, is that we will live off the fat of the land. Now the word in Hebrew for fat of the land is oil. So we're talking about the oil also. And Ishmael also has the oil. So as a result of the invention of the motor engine and the realization that the fuel for the motor engine is petroleum, and so now today it is the Muslims who have the money for the armies and the navies and weapons of mass destruction and missionary activities and the building of mosques and sending of missionaries and Quran books to America, to Canada, to South America, to Europe. Islam is on the march. Islam believes that Allah has promised them the ultimate victory. And they were out, but they were down, but they were not out. In Spain, they were down, but they were not out with the Turks. Now they are on their third and final rise, and they believe ultimately that they will defeat the Christian West. And who, of course, is the greatest country in the Christian West? The United States of America. America will be destroyed according to the Islamic thinking. America must be destroyed. America is the kingpin. America has to be taken out so that all the other dominoes, Christian dominoes, will fall, the European countries. All of Islam's efforts are dedicated to this purpose. Americans can't understand it, because if you drew a little box, and this was your life, God would be a little bit outside of that box. But for Islam, the box is Allah. Everybody's within that box, and you are just a little nothing outside of the box. It's the reverse. Islam is totally dedicated to the ultimate victory, the ultimate destruction of the Jews, the Christians, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the black peoples. What I wanted to do now was to jump ahead to 1979. And I wanted to talk about the three revolutions of Islam. Now, you know, now I don't know if you know, but when I say you know, it's a rhetorical you know, that the Muslims say that their attack on New York City in 9/11 and their attack on the Pentagon and hijacking planes was because the United States supports Israel. Okay? Now, first let me say one thing. The United States does not necessarily support Israel, because America has two types of people. America has Christians, and America has a group of people called anti-Christians. And the anti-Christians do not believe in God. They believe in money. They believe in mammon. And you know that Jesus teaches you cannot serve two masters. You can either serve the Lord or mammon, but not both. And so you've got people in Washington, and you've got people in the U.S. military who serve mammon. And they are allied with the Saudis, they're allied with the Muslims, they're allied with the money, they're allied with the oil, and they're allied with the numbers that the Muslims have. Islam is marching, and the Christians are cowering, basically. Christians are asleep, and the Jews are comatose. Now, you know, if you're asleep, and I pinch you, kick you, or slap you, that's okay, you wake up. But if you're comatose, nothing helps. And it hurts me to say about my own people, the Jewish people, that just as they are locked into this 2,000-year hatred of Christians because of what the Catholics did, the Jews are also locked into this failure to understand that the Holocaust in Nazi Germany is not the last Holocaust. That the greatest Holocaust is staring us in the face. And you know, when you drive a car and your eyes are on the rear view mirror all the time, you're going to run right into a tree or a wall. You got to look ahead to what's coming and not look back all the time. Jews are very good at looking back. And it's one of the reasons why, even though I'm a Jewish person, it is the Christians who listen to me, and it is the Christians who bless me. 1979 was a watershed. There were three major incidents that took place starting in 1979. And you know, people very often do not see the trends in history if you look back only 25 years. People say, let's look back 50 years, or 100 years, or 200 years, or 1,000 years. Islam looks back to the 7th century for its greatness. 25 years ago, you had a president called Jimmy Carter. And you had a State Department. And they were not happy with the human rights violations of the then leader of Iran. His name was Reza Shah Pahlavi. Reza Shah Pahlavi was America's greatest Muslim ally in the Middle East. He was a dictator because there is no democracy in Islamic lands. There can be no democracy in Islamic lands. So he was a dictator. There were human rights violations. So Jimmy Carter and the State Department decided that, you know what? We're going to bring down the Shah. And you know who the greatest leader is now in Iran? Ayatollah Khomeini. And if we help Ayatollah Khomeini, you know what's going to happen? When he comes to power, Ayatollah Khomeini is going to appreciate the State Department and President Jimmy Carter because he is a man of the people. And the moment Ayatollah Khomeini came to power, what was the first thing he said? Death to America. Death to Israel. And they took all of your diplomats hostages in Tehran, in the embassy, for over a year. And what Jimmy Carter did in his stupidity, in his ineptness, in his naivete, and I don't want to say the treason of the State Department. I mean, the State Department is constantly making conceptual errors. And they're compromising the United States of America. What Jimmy Carter and the State Department did in 1979 was to remove your greatest ally, Iran, to remove the Shah of Iran, and to bring in your greatest enemy and turn Iran into the greatest enemy of the United States of America. Enemy number one. And today, as we are talking in the summer of 2003, we're talking about Iran on the verge of nuclear weapons, if they don't have them already. And this is a very, very important point which we're going to emphasize at the very end of the message today. Because the Iranian debate among the Islamic leaders of Iran is, if we nuke Jerusalem first, Allah is the true God. Because the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is a liar. He lied to the Jews in the Old Testament. He lied to the Christians in the New Testament. He's not a covenant God. He's a liar. He's an abrogator. And the greater God, remember Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater than God. Satan is greater than God. But if the Jews and the Christians nuke Mecca first, or not even nuke, you know, you have this big bomb called the Moab. If the Moab is dropped on the Kaaba, and the Kaaba is gone, that's the end of Islam. If the Jews and the Christians hit the Kaaba first, then Allah is the liar. And we will all abandon Allah and come over to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Do you know what that means? That means I am foretelling the destruction of Islam within a very short time. And your job as Christians will be to convert all of the Muslims to Christianity and get them from being murderers and haters of the Jews and Christians to being lovers of the Jews and the Christians. Because you know that's what happens when the Muslims become Christians. And I don't hate the Muslims. I love them. I hurt for them. I have pity on them because they are deceived by Satan God, Allah. That was the first revolution. Second revolution, as I said before, the Afghans destroyed the Hindus, they destroyed the Buddhists, they destroyed the Jews, they destroyed the Christians, and then they started to destroy each other. And Afghanistan went from one civil war to another, and finally the Russians said, this is our chance. There's a lot of division in Afghanistan. We're going to go in and we're going to take over Afghanistan. That was in '79. And then the United States took the side of the Mujahideen. Again, the same State Department says, well, this is the Cold War. These are the only fighting assets we have available. And what comes later comes later.